Hi guys, welcome to my channel At Home with Chris, and I am Chris, and in today's video we are going to be building a wall-mounted jewelry organizer. I will be building this for my daughter to match the vanity that we made over, and I hope she likes it. I think it turned out very well, but I'll let you be the judge of that. And before we move along, I'd like to thank all of my current subscribers. It means the world to me that you took the time out to subscribe to my channel. I can't say enough thanks, and mwah, love you guys. And if you haven't subscribed already, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, let's make a wall-mounted jewelry organizer.
We are going to start by measuring out 16 inches, or that is going to be the length. We're just going to mark all our pieces with the exception of this, because I'm going to want it to probably be a little longer. So I'm going to wait to cut the dowel. I am going to have the materials listed in the description box down below. I'm going to go ahead and take this out to the garage and cut it down with my miter saw. You're more than welcome. You can use a miter box, but since I've got the power tool, I'm going to use that. Okay, I've got them down to 16 inches. These three pieces here. I've got to remove this tag. I find that using a heat gun helps remove these tags pretty easy. All right, and I'm just going to give it a little hand sand. All right, and you just want to make sure you wipe all that dust away. All right, essentially this is what our piece is going to look like. I will glue these two pieces down, and I like to glue raw edges to one another. So I try to avoid as much as possible gluing painted surfaces or stained surface to one another. I just want the best hold possible because I know that she's going to want to put stuff on this top shell. Of course, nothing too heavy because I'm not going to nail it. If you happen to use a thicker piece of wood, you could nail it in place along with some wood glue. I'm just a little leery about doing so on this thinner piece because I will probably end up missing it. So I don't want to deal with that headache. So what I'm going to do is I'll lay the pieces out like I know that they're going to be. I will draw a line on this top one right below it, just so I know not to go above that line with my paint. And the bottom one, I will do the same, get it as even as possible. Let's see here. I'm going to use a ruler, and I'm just going to have it 1 centimeter from the bottom. Just checking it at a few different points. All right. And then I will just draw around that. Just so I know where not to put the paint. And you don't have to do this. It's just something I do. I will be using liquid nails because it's going to be strong. And then right above this one, I will be putting some adhesive. It's, let's see, how thick is that? It's almost a ½ inch thick of cork, and it's self-adhesive, so you just peel it off and you stick it on. I'm going to go ahead and line that up, which it will go right here. And then I'm just going to draw around it so I know where that piece is going to be. And that way I just know that I will be sticking something down there as well. I know it seems a little tedious to some, but you do what you feel will work. I'm sure, especially if you're gonna be using some nails or staples or something along with the glue, then it'll be fine just to paint the whole thing, but I don't wanna do that. You might be thinking, well, why don't you put it together and then paint around it? Well, there's just a few other steps I'll be taking, so just kind of avoiding that. And then on the bottom here, I'm just going to draw an X so I know not to paint there. And then I'm going to know not to paint there. And I'll just put a few X's so I know where not to paint. I'm going to be using the same paint that I had painted on my daughter's vanity table that I made over for her. It's the Heirloom Traditions in the all-in-one paint in the color Iron Gate. All right, we're just gonna let that dry and then look it over, see if it's gonna need any touch-ups. And I'll be using my heat gun to speed the process up. One thing I'm learning about this all-in-one paint is, you know how chalk paint will kind of disguise some of your scratches and everything? This paint does not do that. So if you don't want any scratches in your paint or showing through the paint, then you need to make sure that you sand it down with a real fine grit sandpaper. No, something 400 would probably be good, but it definitely does not disguise any scratches. But it is a pretty paint, and it does seem like it is going to be pretty durable. I mean, heck, it's even recommended for outdoor use. So it's got a few little streaks in there. So I'm just going to go over it one more time. Hope that goes away. All right, and I'm gonna let the remainder of that air dry. Okay, this piece is going to be hanging under the top ledge, which is this piece. And I'm gonna wanna stick out a little bit further. I'm gonna go ahead and use my miter shears, trim this down right about here. And then we're just gonna cut right there. And just so you know, it's just a little over 16 inches. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough. We'll play it by ear. I've got like 16¼ inches. That might be enough. Just a little bit off the edge. All right, and we're just going to cover this dowel rod also in this black paint. And actually, you don't even have to do the tip of it because we're going to be putting one of these wood buttons on the end of it just to give it a decorative look. Got the dowel rod painted. It is dry to touch. I've got these 3/8 inch buttons. I believe I got these from Lowe's, and the purpose that they're going to serve is they're going to go at the end of these just to kind of give it a little bit of a decorative touch. So we do need to paint these buttons black. I've also got these small eye hooks, and this dowel rod is going to be supported by these eye hooks, as you can see we're going to do, and it will just be attached like so. Those eye hooks, we're going to go ahead and paint those as well. And also, when you're painting your pieces, don't forget to do the back sides, okay? Because it's going to be hanging up on the wall, so you will be able to see maybe not so much the back side of the back piece, but you will see the back side of pieces that go horizontal. And if you have any styrofoam, you can always take some styrofoam, put those screws or those eye hooks in there. It'll just make it easier to paint. You could also spray paint these. That would be better. I just don't feel like going outside right now and spray painting. All right, we're going to let those dry. Then what we want to do after the pieces have had a chance to dry that we're going to put the rub and buff on is just take shop paper towel here. Just take some of that rub and buff. A little bit goes a long way with this stuff. And just rub it on there. Oh, and this is the Antique Gold Rub and Buff. All right, and we will leave those to dry. I am still contemplating on if I want to do these. I think I'm going to leave my screws black. Okay, before we start attaching everything together with glue, I want to go ahead and put the little hooks into this bottom ledge. I've got my hooks laid out, and I recommend that you do the same thing. That way it looks like you want it to look. But pretty much what I've done is I started at 1/2 inch, and then every 5/8 of an inch is where I've placed a hook, ending with the 15.5 inch mark. I've got 23 hooks here. And then I am going to, on those lines, mark with a little, since it's black, I'll probably use a white pencil. So I will keep my tape measure rested even with the bottom of the edge. And I'm just going to place them. So that's going to be a little bit further down than halfway down the center. So again, going to mark the 1/2 inch and then every 5/8. So that'll be 1/8. 7/8, 1/2, 1/8. And then you're just going to do that all the way down. And it doesn't have to be exact. It may get a little off as you go, and that's okay. Just as long as it looks fairly even as far as with the spacing. And these little hooks, if I did not mention, these are 1/2 inch jewelry hooks. All right, and I've got my holes there, and that's where I am going to drill some pilot holes. I'm just using a 5/64 drill bit. I'm thinking that if I put this all the way in, I gotta be careful. You don't want to go all the way through the board since we are using a fairly thin piece of board. If you're using something thicker, you're going to have a lot more room. And it's fine to use something thicker. I've done that with other of these jewelry mounts that I've made. But I'm going to put mine all the way in. That way I won't go past that. And I'm just going to test it before I go to make sure I got a large enough drill bit. And I did. It goes in very easily. All right, and then you're just going to screw all of those screws in. All right, and I just want to make sure they're as even as possible. And they look pretty good. If you ask me, that's the hardest part of this whole project, putting tiny little screws in there, or hooks in there. But anyway, essentially it's going to just kind of rest like this after we glue it. You can see how the hooks hang down, because this will be hanging on a wall, and that's where they can hang necklaces, dangly bracelets, whatever floats their boat. Now we are ready to glue this in place so that glue can have a chance to set up. And I'm just using a microfiber towel to get all the dust and loose particles up before we glue. All right, and that's how we are going to glue the pieces together. We're going to use liquid nails. And I'll also be using the little fine tip applicator that came with it. All right, and I'm going to start on this side. Now, I do have some clamps, and you may want to use some clamps to clamp this together once you've got it glued. That way it gets a nice, good hold. Downside is I only have 2 of them. downside of this glue is it sure makes a mess, especially if you're using black paint. You want to get as much of that glue off as possible before it dries. Otherwise, I imagine it will be a headache to try to clean. And then I will just go over that with some black paint too, after it's dried. All right, I'm going to let that dry. Since I've only got 2 clamps, I'm going to let that dry. If you've got more clamps, you can definitely go ahead and put this other one in. Just make sure the hooks are facing downward. And then the little round edge, the little hook part is facing up. But since I don't have any clamps, I'm going to have to wait until this one dries. All right, now it's time to put on the bottom ledge. Make sure those hooks are downward and then with the hook part facing towards you. And then we're just going to use some glue and line it up. I'm just going to roll this paper towel around. You could use a skewer stick, anything that'll get under these hooks, and try to rub off some of that glue. Q-tip would work also. All right, I'm just going to leave that to dry. All right, this part should be all dry. The next thing that I'm going to do is I've got to put this, just going to be a little loop earring holder. In order to do that, we're going to need these eye hooks on each end. And it's going to hang from that top shelf, just like this. So I'm going to flip this upside down. We have got almost 2.5 inches. So half of 2.5 is 1 1/4. I'm going to have it come in on the edges about 1/2 inch, which is half my ruler width. And coming down, let's see, about half, 1 1/4, right there. We'll do the same thing on the other side. And 1 1/4, right there. And I probably should have done that before we put this part on. So if you're making one of these, you might want to wait and go ahead and put your eye hooks in your other piece before you assemble, because it does not leave a lot of room. All right, then we will slide our dowel rod through those loops or through those eye hooks. And then to keep them from rolling off, that's where these little buttons come into play. We're just going to take some glue and we're going to glue them on the ends. All right, I am just going to use the end of a wood skewer just so I can dab some glue in there without getting it everywhere. Now, if you use liquid nails, you're going to have to be a little bit patient. You're going to have to hold it there until it starts to set, which could be a few minutes. And before you do the second one, you're going to want to make sure you put this through those loops and then glue the second end cap. Otherwise, you won't be able to get this wood dowel through the loops. All right, we're just going to let that dry completely. Okay, everything's dry. It actually turned out pretty well. The glue doesn't show as bad as I thought it was going to, so I don't believe I'm going to have to touch up anything there. I don't know if you can see that. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put this foam board. Now, it does have a self-adhesive strip on it, but I'm going to ensure that this does not come off. I'm just going to use some Starbond medium high performance adhesive. You can use gel super glue, would be perfectly fine. All right, that's what we've got. So I'm going to do a little bit of touch up around the areas, around where this glue is exposed. I'm just going to do some touch up. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a decorative element with a stencil that I'm going to create with my Cricut. If you don't have a cutting machine, you can pick stencils up at any craft store and then just do a design. You can draw it out. You can leave it blank. I just want to add a little bit of color to the black. And so after I do the touch up and let that dry, that's what I'm going to work on. Got that touched up. I'm just going to let that dry, and then I'm going to work on putting a little design right in here. All right, I went ahead and put a stencil on here. I'm going to be using this Celery Waverly chalk paint. Now, since we're stenciling, you don't want to get too much on your paint because you don't want it to bleed through, and you want to pounce it up and down. I'm going to let that dry down just a little bit and pull off my stencil. Wow, I think that turned out really well. I think that's going to match her vanity table very nicely. And it's pretty much finished. The last thing we've got to do is put on some hangers. And I've got this kit that I just got, I want to say from Amazon, possibly even Lowe's. It's just an assortment of hangers. Comes in really handy. I'm just going to use the gold color sawtooth hangers here. And for that, you're going to need a ruler and something to mark it with. Going to need a drill bit and a drill. All right, I'm going to use a 3/32 drill bit. I am going to put them 1 inch in, and then on the 4th line down. Then I'm just going to mark the holes and then do the same thing for the other side. That's all finished. I think it came out really nice. She's been wanting one. I made her girl some, so she's been wanting one. All right. Cammy, no, it's paint. You can't come up here when I'm painting. Nope, you can't come up here when I'm painting.
And with that being said, let's make a her again. Say hello to everybody, Cammy. Go on. She just loves her mommy. I love her too. She's a good kitty. She's very playful. I know. There you go. If you let me finish this, we'll do that, okay? If you let me finish this, we'll go freeze our butts off so you can do the stroll thing. I can't say W-A-L-K. You'll get crazy.